Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the August 3rd meeting of the Village of Ossining Historic Preservation Commission. I'm Adam Markovics, chairperson of the commission. Would the other commission members please state their names for the record?
Dana White.
Catherine Wilson.
I have not heard from Phil Ferranda. I don't know if he's going to be here tonight. Okay, why don't we get started with the applicant for 191 Main Street.
All right. We have Kaya, I believe, and Elizabeth Pasquale.
Kaya, you are muted.
Thank you. I'm on mute. I sent a PowerPoint presentation to Jamie I think Friday. I don't know if she had prepared for this to be run or whether I should run it and share my screen if that is possible.
It is possible. If you'd like to share your screen, that might work better. Okay. I have your application, but not your PowerPoint.
You don't have
I just want to make one point, Kaya. We only have 4 board members tonight, so if you decide to proceed, it must be a unanimous vote of all 4. Any dissent would be a rejection. Thank you.
Would it be a rejection or waiting for next time?
It's your choice.
Okay, so, but I can't make that decision.
If you get a sense that the board is not necessarily leaning in your favor, you can request that it get put over to the following month.
All right, very good. I'm going to attempt to get this PowerPoint presentation up and running. And I will say now, I'm going to put in share screen. And here. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. I am going to play it from the start, and then we can go back and look at specific things if you would like. I think that's the easiest way.
Palmer Hall, 191 Main Street, facade renovation. HPC meeting August 3rd, 2020.
Oh, sorry, I moved my, oh, let's start over. I moved my pen, my cursor. I can't do that.
Palmer Hall, 191 Main Street, facade renovation. HPC meeting August 3rd, 2020. Facade and storefront renovation, existing conditions, historically inaccurate architectural features and building entries. Proposed work, restore period appropriate architectural details, storefront and entry. Background. 191 Main Street, also known as Palmer Hall, was erected in 1876 in high Victorian or East Lake style. From photos, we can see that up through at least 1921, the original facade and storefront was preserved. Background. The Big Fire of 1909. 190 Main is the building on the far left of the large picture. And we can see the detail from the Big Fire of 1909 on the far left. The picture from 1901 is below. Bracketed and cornices are clearly visible. The building facade layout is clearly visible as a 3-bay with the entry to the apartment occupying the leftmost bay and the storefront with the center door on the right 2 bays. Later photo documentation shows an altered storefront. Based on the time the later photo was taken and the stylistic elements I estimate this first alteration was completed in the late 40s or early 50s and was kept that way until the late 1970s. Historical significance. The building is part of the historic architectural district of downtown Ossining. The following is from a filing with the Division for Historic Preservation, New York State Parks and Recreation. The building is also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. This is a quote from William Higgins that was filed with New York State Historic Preservation Department on February 2nd of 1975. He says, the building is an integral part of the Ossining Crescent, a group of contiguous late 19th century and early 20th century structures occupying a gently curving block which acts as the center and focal point of the town's commercial district. The building is ornate with a large, heavy bracketed cornice and stylized gotee below the brackets. A large parapet with name and date bearing central semicircular pediment. Incised label lintels with small gotee over windows. The building is both a good example of the commercial vernacular architecture of the 1870s and an essential harmonious element in a locally important commercial complex. The later document filed by Ossining Office of Community Development in 1984 shows a picture of the current storefront. The current facade, as well as the facade of 193 Main and the Barlow Block at Spring Street, were the results of a beautification program undertaken by the village starting in 1979 with funds from a community development grant provided by HUD. The total grant amount was $904,132. The 1979 conversion. Numbers 191 and 193 Main Street are pictured here. The architectural details of the storefronts are nowhere to be found in any historic data or pictures and was not a feature of the time. Other detailed updates done at the same time can be seen on the Barlow Block below the Spring Street, Brandreth, and Central Avenue intersection. The design elements took stylistic liberties specifically seen in the storefront ornamentations. Despite the laudable effort and undertaking, it is unfortunate that so much of downtown Ossining has been identified with this signature, which has no base in historic accuracy. Several applications for appropriateness over the years have leaned on these design features, so much so that ill-fitting design choices are perpetuating in the downtown landscape. We aspire with this application in a small way to replace these design flaws with a more appropriate design. The 1979 conversion continued. The main elements added in the 1979 renovation are setting the storefront back from the front edge of the property, creating a side-to-side symmetry by adding a column on the right uphill side of the storefront opening, and installing an enlarged ornamental signboard adorned with extended pilasters and arches duplicating features of the parapet. The architectural and historic contrast. Looking at similar buildings of this style from the period which were left untouched or restored to their original facade, as well as consulting building catalogs of the time, it is clear to see that the three-column setup follows standard options offered by the mid to late century suppliers of prefabricated cast iron building materials. Based on this, we assumed the original facade layout for 191 Main consisted of two pilasters flanking the building wall opening with an additional pilaster at the entry door to the upper apartments. The picture shown is from the Chase and Geese Grocers, which was an Ossining grocery store from the period. Typically for the period between 1870 and 1900 for buildings of this size and construction is of 2 to 3 bays with the staircase to the upper floors set to one side. The storefront would be centered on the other two bays. The fenestration would be in line with the front wall, or in some cases, extending past the front wall, protected by a bracketed cornice. The overall look is of a storefront offset to one side, but symmetrical in and of its own, with a center door to the store. The storefront door was often set back past the building's front wall to engage more window display, as is seen in the plan views on both plates. The facade to the right is a simulated 5 bay, and the door to the apartments on the far left occupies 1 bay. Our research and probing supports these findings. The 1979.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back one. We'll play from this current.
The 1979.
Sorry, one more. I'm sorry, this, we're here.
Our research and probing supports these findings. After exposure of the existing cast iron columns above the drop ceiling, where the capitals are in clear view, we conclude that the 3-column offset support is the original layout of the storefront. The 2 columns bracing the apartment entry have a spindled molding and fluting motif on 2 sides, the front face and on the side facing in towards the entryway. The column to the far right has 2 flat sides and are, in essence, a true pilaster. On both columns and pilasters, the sides facing the storefront are flat, indicating a fenestration brought forward and in line with the front of the building and the columns. The 1979 renovation added a 4th column in a contrived effort to balance the symmetrical aspect of the new facade. This is the column bracketing the display window to the right. The 2-column bracing the apartment entry have a spindled molding and fluting motif on the front, with the return facing in towards the entryway as pictured in the picture below. Returns in wood were added to replicate the motif on the now exposed flat sides, which can be seen in the picture to the right. The column to the right of the apartment entry has wood cladding on its right side, where the original storefront butted into the flat surface. And on the far right, you can see the picture of the fake 4th column. The color palette of the late 19th century houses and commercial buildings were rich tertiary hues based in natural pigments: greens, red, browns, yellows, and sometimes creamy whites. The original color scheme for 191 Main Street was most likely a monochromatic mix of brown color hues on the trim with lighter and darker tones to bring out the details. The brick was most likely unpainted. Later photos show the brick painted in a creamy white and the trim maintained in dark browns. The current trim palette uses modern vibrant colors of red, blue, and yellow. Not only are these colors not in keeping with the period, but the pigments are based in modern paint chemistry of cadmium and titanium, which can produce more vibrant and stable colors. It is unlikely that the building was painted in the hues it now harbors. However, the colors are now part of the historic fabric of downtown, and there is no intention to repaint at this time. Also, existing exterior colors is not part of the Ossining HPC mandate. The paint layers seem sound, and the new storefront cornice and brackets will be painted to coexist with the current color scheme.
Okay, that was that. That was some of the background. I don't know, do you want me to share the presentation of the plans? I know that I had a few details that I added Jaime, that was not in that one that was,
I can share those. I have those pulled up.
okay, great.
All right. So if you could just guide me to where you want me to go,
Sure.
and then I'll go there.
Many of the items many of the pictures are going to be similar and the same. This is the standard first page showing the site location, the placement of the building on the lot, and we have several storefront pictures. And we have a rendering of the current look of Palmer Hall here, with some comments basically repeating what I mentioned, that some of these columns were not original and the sides were not original. We can go to the next page. Again, here you see some of the same close-ups. Here on the right, on the left, you can see the two pilasters next to each other, or two columns next to each other. One that is the replication and the other one that's the original. And you can see how the two front doors, the door to the apartment building is now set back on the slanted wall, and the door to the storefront is symmetrical opposite that. And the display window in the storefront is simulating the old entrance to the other apartments. Basically, these are the same pictures with some of the same verbiage about the storefront. But if we go to the second one on the bottom, you can actually really see a good example in the bracketed overhang, the cornice, and you can see the door to the storefront in the middle. And you can see how the fenestration is really, it's almost like the modern curtain wall, that you had the window structure set inside of there, and it's not holding anything up. And the dark abyss to the very left is actually the entrance to the apartments. Here's another view of it. And you can see in this picture here, you can see how the building is actually very dark. It's a black and white, but it's unpainted, and it's hard to see whether the metal ornamentation was painted, or at that point, 25 or a good 35 or 40 years later, it could just have been worn off and just be rusting metal. But in this picture here, you can actually get a good view, a sense of what the brackets looked like, and that they were following the design of the brackets on the top under the parapet. And if you look closely on this particular picture here and the detail with the red car, now that you know that there's these two bands of the road molding, you can almost see that in the picture as the linear line that this sort of goes back. And I think it clearly shows that the door to the apartments were set back, and the door itself was sitting right behind the two three-quarter columns. So this is again later when the building was painted a white light color. And here you can, on the left, you can see the column that is actually a load-bearing column, and it's holding up the steel I-beam and a plate that sits on there. So again, this is the current. And this is what we would like to do. So we would like to create that symmetry within the two bays, the center and the right bay. We would like to push the front door, the door entry to the apartments, back behind the columns again, make that a single door. And as you can see in plan U, which comes up in a bit, we will have that entry to the storefront also sit back a little bit so that there will be two side lights so you can look in, so it has more display. We will keep it to the same number of brackets. The steel beam is about a foot, and then there is 2 4-inch steel plates that are actually sitting, the 2 real columns by the apartment entrance are actually, they're sitting right between that and the I-beam. So we have a little bit more height there, but we will basically stay within that frame. And we have to discuss later on how we're going to do store signs, but I think there's plenty of room for store signage in the transoms above the 2 sides and the door to the storefront. Or again, we can also go in with awnings. I mean, there's this whole thing about an awning that would create a place for visually display the storefront. This is just a vector view of it, so you can see the idea about the side lights. The side light would actually go all the way up. For some reason, I cut them short there, but they would be going up all the way to line up with the upper line of the transoms. Yep.
All right. I think that's it. There's this last piece. Yeah.
Yeah, here's, you can see how we are not going to do it on a slant. It's a lot of technicality in terms of making the windows the same size. We had the issue down on 183. It was really a mind game trying to make everything look like it fit the same envelope. So we are just going to go straight back and just give it that setback. I think that's the last page, I think.
It is, yeah.
Oh, there's a little, there should be a close-up. If, actually, I could pull up my, I could actually pull up my little plan here and share those last 2 pages with you, because I think I made a detail of the section through the parapet, and also, not in this one. See here, July 20, that's July 20 small. Okay, well, let me see if I can find that. Sorry, I thought I had sent that over as well. Okay, here we go. I can go to my last page and just share that with you. You can see the section through the storefront, those last 2 pages. Can I share that with you?
Yeah, you can share.
Okay. See how I do that. Get rid of this one. Get to the place where it says I share screen. Okay, here we go. That's that. Can you see that? I'm sharing that with you now. So here's the section through the whole storefront. This is the existing parapet with a sign. And here you would have this last row of the sills are here. And then here is the overhang with the brackets. And then on here, you have more of a detail of what that bracket will look like. Should I unshare?
Yeah, thank you, Kaya. So I'll jump in. I think the overall design is uncontroversial and welcome. It's a restoration to what was. And I think you've provided ample photographic evidence and period evidence of what the storefront most likely looked like. And it obviously underwent changes in the intervening years, and you're bringing it back to what it was, which of course is sort of the gold standard for historic preservation. So the overall plan is one that I think is welcome and is exciting. So I think I just have some questions about the details.
Yeah.
The overall plan I think is terrific. So you're going to be restoring this cornice with these 10, I believe, brackets. What are they going to be made of? What's the material you're using?
Well, I think we haven't really discussed that yet. We probably have to have them made. So the simple form of it, it can be made in cedar. It can be made in mahogany. It's really a matter of, and of course it could also be made in AZAC, but since so much of what is there that are details are actually cast iron, I'm not quite sure whether wood or cedar would be correct. I think the original probably was wood because it was the last section of the building. We have to have them made. They don't exist. So I think it's going to be a laminated block. And, so it's either going to be cedar or mahogany, a material that will stand up, and then it will be painted. I think it's going to be, apart from the windows themselves, it's probably going to be, the one thing that's going to be a little costly to do. I wouldn't do those in AZAC because I don't think we can get that detail out the way we did at 183 as a comparison. We did a completely different idea there, but I think it should be wood. And then that will, when the paint starts, effervescing, it just looks like something that effervesces with grace until it gets painted again.
So I think we would, want to see samples, maybe, pictures of the materials you intend to use, before we would give an approval with respect to the cornice and the brackets.
That would be a very costly undertaking because we would have to have it made. And having one made it doesn't exist. So we're building it up. We can certainly, there are the details from the parapet. We're basically taking the small cornice. We have the 4 big brackets up in the parapet. And then we have the interspersed shorter ones. This is an exact replica of the ones that are sitting underneath, the shorter ones. There is nothing changed. It's the same little motif with the drop, the goutte, as they call them, that's sitting there, that will be the same coloration as well. We've flued it the same way. So if I can, we can certainly, I can try to make a mock-up in another material to scale, paint it, and show it to you. Are
the dimensions of the brackets on the proposed new cornice identical to the dimensions of the brackets up by the parapet, or are they smaller?
They have to be smaller because they are in dimension with, it's going to be anywhere from 1.6 to little less tall, and 1 foot to 1.5 foot, including the little top molding deep. The proportions are really going to be based on how far out we make the cornice. The little slanted half roof that will sit underneath. It's going to have a pitch, and it's going to sit underneath that bottom row of sills, and we have to have some clearance there. We're going to have flashing. So it will be fairly shallow, but we're not going to go out more than 1 foot, 1.2 feet.
Are those dimensions, I don't recall seeing dimensions for the cornice or the brackets in the plan.
I sent this to Jamie on Friday and asked her to send it to you. This is what I just presented. Those 2 pages that I just showed here, that I shared with you, have those details.
Okay.
So that's in there, and Jamie has them. had hoped that she would have shared them with you. I asked her to.
Would you mind resharing, Kaya?
Oh, I can do that right this minute. Should I share, what should I do? Should I send it to you guys? Then
If you
email?
could give me a second, I'm going to try to see if I can find the email from her. All right.
Okay.
I was hoping you could just share your screen again.
Oh, I can do that easily. And it's the last email I sent to her, which would have been from Friday afternoon. Okay, let me share the screen again. Where are we? So you see here? Let me make this a little bigger and scroll. So you see this dimension here. That blue line here, this is in plan view. That is basically the cornice projection, and that will be roughly 1'8". Then this red band, or whatever that called, that pink red band, is this crown molding that will be sitting up underneath. Then this here. So there's a piece of crown molding. Basically, that's sort of our fascia, sits on top of the drop. Then we have each of the brackets here. And that outline here is this triangular molding that sits here, basically a bed mold that connects the two. This is the same motif that we see above on the original, which is a yellow. Here will be yellow and it will be blue on the inside, I believe, or vice versa. The goutte, the drops are red. And then we have the fluting in here, I think, is blue. So this is going to be a buildup that is going to replicate exactly what was above, but to the proportions that we have to work with.
Okay.
Let me go to the previous page. You can see it. And I'm gonna bring it in a little closer. This is the section view. Whoa. Yep, sorry. Section view, here we go. So here you can see the proportions. Overall, we're gonna go up as far as we can, up underneath here without cramping it too much. This is the sill that we have over here. And this is the slanted roof with its flashing, and you know, whether that's gonna be steel, a standing seam or a regular, that's something that you can tell us what you would like. It most likely would be it could be basically a piece of copper flashing that we bend. The whole thing can be made in copper. This is our bed mold. And this is the fascia. And then here we have the bracket with its little molding that sits around to cover the joint.
Okay. So of the component pieces, most will be of wood. You said I'm not sure what to call the top piece, but that's going to be entirely in copper?
No, I mean, it's only the cladding. You know, what we're building this out of, we will build this out of an MDO, another exterior building material, so that we have the structure here. That would be we're reusing most likely, you know, 2x10s, 2x8s, whatever, to as a structure underneath. Then there will be a flat roof here. That would be a flat under roof that most likely will be an MDO. So it will be an exterior compressed wood material that is paintable and also cannot withstand all the weather. The actual cladding plus this piece of flashing you can see here, that can be done in one piece, and that can be done in copper. We can then let it let it weather. First, it will be very dark for a long time before it even gets green, if it will ever get green. Depends on the quality of the copper, but it will be a dark brown, and that wouldn't look bad against, or we will paint it. Currently, the flashing and the shed that's on there now is painted blue. So we have chosen to do the same here, painting it blue, but it has to be a weather material, so it will be most likely a metal.
Got it.
Everything underneath here can either be done, this is a more or less the standard nose and cove that you have in the rest of the trims up in the parapet. So this is a very standard trim piece, federal piece, as we almost call it. That can be done in AZAC and painted, or it can be done in wood. And I will, if you feel that it should be wood, we can do that. AZAC is, more stable material, and we are painting it, so it's another. The fascia here that sits here is going to be 6 or 8 inches. I can't really see the dimension. Yeah, it's going to be around 6 or 8, and that is basically framing everything in the vertical plane. And then there's a roof inside of that that sits just below that. And then you have our bracket. Then we have the bracket with that little piece of molding that sort of connects the two.
Okay.
Yeah. And everything will be structurally put together the way you put wood timber construction together.
Now, I personally don't have any strong feeling about AZAC versus wood on the cornice components. But I tend to agree with you. I think if you want to achieve detail in the brackets, I think that'd probably be easier to do in wood, no?
You know what? I've had surprisingly good success with having someone carve. It's all done with Dremel tools and modern carving tools to have details made in AZAC. But the one thing about AZAC is that it is produced with a slick surface, which can't be painted, but also is smooth. The moment you start carving into it, you create an unsmooth surface that is a little harder to get smooth. So it might be simpler to have this made in real wood, with a build-up block, and then it would be cut on a CNC machine and hand. All the fluting and stuff like that would be done by hand.
Okay. You are removing a column, right?
We are removing a fake column, yes. Let me move over here and go up one page. We are moving a column that the only columns that have any load bearing. Let me go back to the original. See here we are. Here, oh, sorry. While we're looking at it's hard to make this go slow. While we're looking at the parapet, right? These are the ones we are duplicating. Now, these are much taller. I mean, not by much, but they are taller. And we don't have the room for that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the exact same detail. Let me go up to the next page. Is that where we are? Or are we on the original here? There we are. Okay. So this is the column that was added. That was added. It's not really holding anything up. All this, the ceiling, there's a drop ceiling, and the ceiling that is underneath that, which we went up to when we took pictures of the actual supporting columns, is up in here somewhere. So this one is, it supports the fenestration, but it doesn't hold anything up in the building.
Okay. And you're removing some wood cladding on the column to the immediate left of that, right?
Yes, we are. We are taking it down. I'm not showing it here because I think, unfortunately, we are taking down, we're taking down this column, and then we're taking down, basically, it's a sliver. It's like slicing this off here along the side of the window. So it's, sorry, it's this here.
Okay.
Basically slicing off this much. Then we will get a flat pilaster.
Got it. Got it.
And
Okay.
thing on the other side, we will take that, that mirrored other side of the column of when we go over to the store, to the entrance to the apartments, this is the same thing. We're slicing off this right there. And then we come down to a flat side here.
Right. Where you'll install the storefront bay.
Yes. Get back to that. Right.
A question about the transoms. Are they all uniform in dimension?
On the suggested, on the proposed?
In the proposed, yeah.
They should be. They should be. This section here is identical to this section here. So basically you create a center line along the two doors. And that's just symmetry line between this and that. So this window section here is the same size as this window section.
Mm-hmm.
This will maybe or may not be the same size as over here, but everything, the horizontal line follows.
Okay.
We have a little bit of a pitch. It drops a tiny bit right here at the very right. So the panels may be made a little smaller if we think that it's better that they all have the same size. I think we'll see when we get out to the front of the sidewalk and we start building up, we'll see what really makes sense and how much of a pitch we have. But I would say all the storefronts that still has paneling in the front, they just followed the line of the street, and whenever there was more room for a panel, they put a bigger panel in, and when there wasn't, they put a smaller panel in, and that's sort of been what we see down Main Street.
They'll be made of AZEK or wood?
I think we probably will do, I think this whole front here will be done in MDO paneling and painted. So it will be a 2x6 framing because we have to have the insulation in there, and then it will be clad on the outside in MDO, probably 5/8 or even 3/4. And then that will be painted, and then we put trim on top. And the trim pieces around the windows are going to be very small and slim because there wasn't that much of it back in the day. We are not making a window section, as you can see. We are not creating the very fine steel or cast iron corners where the windows return in. We're not doing something like that. We're making it a little simpler, so it will be a return, and we will probably put some trim on it there, but so far it's going to be very simple. We're not going to any lengths on that.
The bays, I think I heard you correctly, Kaya, when you said that you're going to make the bays, the bay windows sort of opposite the storefront door, straight up and down rather than slanted. Is that right?
Yeah. The reason being that I would like to have as much window as possible. It is a grocery store. And if I slant it in, we need a big door. I mean, here I I'd sort of hope we can do a 42-inch double door. So if we do anything smaller, we would have to go to a single door, and we can do that with a single door and simulate it, having it 2-panel glass. But if we slant it in or slant out, we will lose window space. And I think the proportions of the windows then will be a little too small. So instead of us slanting it, it's going to be straight back.
Okay. With regard to the windows, the storefront windows, there's a line separating the 2 panes. Is that going to be an aluminum sort of strip separating the 2 panes, some other material?
This will be, we have spec'd Marvin's. It's called an Ultrex, and Ultrex is their name brand or their brand trademark for an extruded fiberglass, which is very nice and thin in form. This here will be a simulated divided light. So you will have the mullions be seen on both sides. They're not sitting between the panes. They're sitting on the outside and on the inside as well. And it's 2 separate pieces of, it's not really 2 separate pieces of glass, it's not true, but there is a strip of metal on the inside that makes it simulated as if these are 2 separate panels or panes with a mullion between.
Okay.
So, but it's going to be so that when you look in from the side, it's going to have a black line. It used to be like a silver colored now, but it's going to be a black line, so it looks like you're looking into a real mullion that goes all the way through. So that's what the SDL stands for, simulated divided light. And we just did it in the bottoms. We did not do it in the tops. We just thought that this would be a nice way to break up the storefront and carry some of that vertical feeling that we have in the original windows.
You mentioned signage. What were you thinking in terms of, what the owner or lessor would do in terms of an awning or internal signage?
Internal signage or etching is not really going to be etching, but it can be an applied etching of the glass. That was very common, as you saw in the Chase and Gee's storefront window. That was actually an etched glass. And that was my suggestion for that. And I would suggest also that eventually that there's going to be an awning put up, without sides so that the brackets will be visible. But that will be the space for the storefront to have their name and their identity.
Well, I think that's all my questions for now. Does anyone else have any questions?
The current sign for the store, I think, is just a banner put up in the transom, right? They don't have that big signboard above has not been used. So I think that having the signage in the window like that is kind of what's already happening. The other thing, I would just like to say that, I think Kaya and Ken are doing a real service for the community here, because after urban renewal, they realized that what they had left on this side of the street should be preserved, but then they hired a guy named Robert Dean, who was supposedly an architect, to redo all the facades on Main Street. And he got to a good many of them, including the 4 buildings that burned down in 1995. So we're not seeing those anymore, right? So we have the Barlow block, and then we have this building and a few others. And it turns out he actually did not have a valid architect's license in New York State. And the designs he created were completely out of his imagination. They didn't seem really based in any historical reference that was Ossining specific. That project went on for several years. It's kind of an example of how, to me, a redo goes too far. And I think to bring it back is really great. And you know, I know that the other storefront you did is just beautiful. You know, I mean, these have all been, so many of them dramatically changed over the years depending on consumer trends. You know, in the 20s and into World War II, it was these big, deep windows that were created for window shopping, and we still see those like at Bob's, Army Navy. And we saw that at the dentist office that you redid. So I just think you guys are, and also Elizabeth Pasquale, of course, the owner, willing to invest in that. I think kudos to all of you. So that's all.
Thank you.
Catherine, Joyce, any comments?
I just think it's beautiful. This is really exciting watching it go back to its original state.
Yeah, I would agree. Happy to see it happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, Kaya. I can't, you know, you've answered every question I have, and I think my co-commissioners, you've answered all of their questions as well. It's a very, very thorough application, and I appreciate that. We all do. You know, I would make a motion to approve it without any modifications as is. Would someone care to second that motion?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Kaya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kaya.
Now on to ARB, BAR. Thank you. Have a good evening, all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the high school video essay contest. Have Catherine and Dana, have you had a chance to review it? I've been working on it with Joyce.
Yeah, I looked over it. I think it looks great. I'm excited. Very thorough.
I looked over it too. My one concern was it seems the deadline is too soon. That's what I thought. October, what is it? October 30th, only because, you know, school this year is going to be chaotic. You know, all school systems are trying to figure out how they're going to open. And I guess we're going to have a kind of a hybrid, part in school, part out. And I just feel like people are going to be getting used to that. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't give kids a little more time.
I think the plan was to gather the group's comments this evening and send this revised proposal to Mirla Puelo at Ossining High School and let her weigh in on things like the timing and
Okay.
any other changes she wanted to make. But yeah, I don't have any problem pushing the deadline back.
I also might do a paragraph break. In the first paragraph where it says the HPC is sponsoring a video essay contest, I might break that, make it a separate paragraph so it doesn't run into the description of what the HPC is. And it just highlights that, oh, and we're sponsoring it. You know what I mean? It's just a visual thing.
Got it, yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, I'd like to enter. Can I enter? No. Okay. But I think it's a terrific project.
I added, at Joyce's suggestion, a rubric at the end of the proposal, or the contest rules. I'm not at all familiar with rubrics. Joyce tells me this is what is being done these days in high school and in other, even in college and graduate programs. I neglected to add one row, which I think I'd like to add, that is more administrative, so to speak, in nature, sort of compliance with the criterion for the bibliography and the cover letter and word count / time limit. So I think I'll add one more row to the rubric so that students are aware that we are also going to be paying attention to their adherence to the contest guidelines, in addition to the more substantive areas that we're going to be evaluating the submissions on. So with that, I think I'll make one or two edits, and I will send it off to Ms. Puelo and report back to the group on what she says. She's excited about it. I think we're excited about it. I think this is going to be real positive. Oh, and I need to speak to Phil to confirm that, in fact, his business is going to be sponsoring the contest. That's an important piece.
Yeah.
Okay, I had asked Stuart to update the group on two matters, one being the training requirement that land use board members are supposed to fulfill on an annual basis, and whether the requirement that I think it's four hours of training be completed within the calendar year is, let's say, told in light of the public health emergency. The other matter is the prospective closing of the Victoria home and what that may or may not mean for the prospect of landmarking that structure.
Let me deal first with the training. There's been no discussion of any tolling. A lot of courses are now online. And Jamie Kane is very, very good about sending out those announcements to your folks. Obviously, if for some reason people are not able to complete by the end of the year, just, you would let us know, and I'm sure accommodations will be made. But anything that was otherwise live has essentially turned into an online webinar. Many things that are available on tape through various planning federations. So if you see something like that and you're interested in it, please sign up, and we'll we'll talk about the cost if there is a cost. But if you, for some reason, you're finding you're unable to do the training by the end of the year, just let us know. But there's been no formal policy with regard to tolling or anything like that. The Bar Association, for example, has, I can't count how many courses that are now online.
Yeah.
I've been able to complete my certified, my continuing legal education and more during the course of this period. With regard to Victoria Home, they have made a decision to close the facility. They will begin transferring patients out effective the 24th of August. I spoke with their attorney, who has not yet formally spoken with his clients in terms of what their plans are. It's very dispiriting for them because they're not a big company that owns this place. They put a great deal of money into the various plans. They originally had plans for a 105-unit facility. After everything was approved by the planning board and the zoning board, the State Department of Health came back and said you can only put in a 90-bed unit. So they had to basically gut all those plans, start all over again, and got those all approved. They are now, they do have extensions for both, but it does appear that they are not going to proceed with that. What they're going to do, we don't know yet. In terms of landmarking, you could start the process. I would urge a little caution here. One is that we have folks who own the building who I think have made a very, very difficult decision very recently. If you suddenly hit them with an application that you want to landmark, I don't want to say it's unfeeling, but it's probably not appropriate just yet, because this is not Brandreth Pill Factory, folks. This is a small group of people who own this place, and as I said, have poured tens of thousands of dollars into trying to get these plans approved, got the plans approved, and for whatever reason, be it the pandemic, be it bank issues or whatever, they can't proceed. So I would really, I just want you to think about that. In addition, they're not going to start to move patients out until the 24th of August. I don't know what their current patient population is. The plan had been that they were going to be moving patients essentially toward the new wing, and then they would get rid of the old place, and then they would work things back and forth. That's not obviously what's going to happen now. Everyone's going to be moved out. I can tell you, though, that if they, at the time the building is emptied, if they were to present a complete demolition application to the building department, which would include a bond, insurance, and everything like that, there is nothing that currently stops the building inspector from issuing a demolition permit. Demolition permit is good for 6 months. But depending on how long it takes them to actually get the patients out, they're not at a point where they would even, I think, be contemplating that just yet. And so that's where that is. In terms of what this board could do, obviously, if you were to proceed with an application to landmark it, and I should say, I do not know what the applicant's position is as to whether they would support or oppose that, whether they're actually looking to sell the property, looking to sell the building, looking to develop in some other way. I do not know, and their attorney as of last week did not know. So, that's all there. So there are more unanswered questions than answered questions. The code does give provisions for how to go about landmarking both districts and particular buildings. If an application is filed, the building department is directed not to issue any building permits, including any demolition permits. But again, I guess my best advice is tread lightly at this point, because we just don't know what they're planning to do. And their decision is fairly, very, very recent. I mean, it's only really from last week. As I said, I don't know what the patient population is or the resident population, so I don't know how long that will take. But hopefully, their attorney will have some better information over the next few weeks. And when I get that information, I'll be happy to communicate it to all you folks. But I would say that if it becomes a vacant building, then it has to be dealt with pursuant to the village's vacant building code in terms of basically securing the facility and going from there. So, that's what it is. Does it have the possibility of being landmarked? It does. But as you all know, there is a process that has to be followed with regard to that. And ultimately, that's a determination that's made by the Board of Trustees. So, that's where it is right now.
Have the plans that were approved by the Planning and Zoning Board, they have an expiration date?
Yes, and they were recently both extended. I would have to go look. The zoning variance was extended fairly recently for another 6 months. And I know that the site plan was approved, and that's generally an extra year. So I don't know what the dates are, but both have been extended. They've been extended, planning at least once, zoning a couple of times, because in the past they've had some issues with regard to getting their financing in place.
Okay.
Stuart, so demolishing the old mansion was part of the plan before they decided to close, right?
That is correct.
So assuming they close the entire facility, we can assume the building will be spared for the time being, I suppose, right?
At least in the immediate situation, they may sell it to someone who wants to take it down, or they may think that they need to take it down and then sell the vacant land. I'm not sure I have no idea what their plans are, except that it's not going to be a facility any longer.
Well, the second case.
Can I follow up on that? Why do you say that, Stuart?
Well, because if they're closing, someone would have to come in and get state approval to open it up. And they'd have to find that they could do it with just 45 beds, although there are plans on the board. I mean, theoretically, could they sell this to someone else with the plans? Yes, but that person would have to come in and build a 90-bed unit. They can't, any change to that would require a change in the site plan. And presumably, if they're going to close, they're going to have to go through the process with the state, which is to essentially close up the facility. So it's not like they can just close it. But I'm sure that let me say this, if they've got an August 24th date, it leads me to suspect that they have gotten some indication from the state that that's okay and that they can start the process of transferring the patients out.
Okay. Dana, did I cut you off? Interrupt you?
No.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
Adam, if I may. Stuart, quick question on that one. And probably Jaime, you may be able to help, sort of understand a little more on this. What is the current zoning, the zone on this Victoria home?
Oh, I have to look that up.
Let me look it up.
Yeah, I believe it's a T zone, if I'm correct.
You might be correct. Does anybody know what the address is again?
25 North Malcolm.
The reason why I'm asking that question is because if they want to deviate, I believe, and probably Stuart can correct me, if they want to deviate of an approval site plan, there's very limited things that they can do on this facility in regards to what is approved or what is allowable in a T zone as well. Correct, Stuart?
That's correct. Well, it's currently a non-conforming use. So if they're going from non-conforming to non-conforming, it will be very difficult for them to do that.
Yeah.
Unless anyone had anything more to add to that.
Well, I was thinking maybe we should, we won't say anything to them, but maybe
It is a T zone.
search together, maybe. Start gathering information about the place and figure out, how to move forward if and when. So I'll start.
I'll help.
Joyce, if you want to start with me, I don't know.
Yeah, I already started with selecting.
I mean, have you been inside it? Has anybody here been inside it?
I was a child.
Yeah.
I was inside it about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And the mansion itself was built to be an English style manor. And I can see how it's completely impractical for a nursing home. But I guess it has been since what, the 20s or something. But it's pretty neat. It's a lot of heavy wood, big, massive hearths. It looks like it's from another era. So it's a bit of an anachronism for our current age, but they don't make them like this anymore, I'll tell you. But I don't know, it's pretty neat. It'd be neat to try and get a tour of it. I mean, I don't want to, freak them out, but maybe at some point we could get a tour of it.
I would wait for the time being, please.
Oh, I'd wait too, but it's pretty, it looks like a big shingle mansion from the outside, but inside it looks like an English manor. It's pretty neat, if that's your thing. No. Okay.
All right. The only other item that I had on the agenda is the First Baptist Church. I don't unfortunately have anything new to add about that. I did a little bit more research into grants available to religious institutions, other institutions. I think perhaps the most promising would be a grant through the New York State Office of Parks and Historic Preservation, Recreation, SHPO, called the EPF grant, I believe. But the problem is that that requires matching funds. And I don't think those funds are there. So I will continue, the discussion with my contact at the First Baptist Church, Geneve. And if anyone else has any ideas, please share them, because every day that passes, all the woodwork and the steeple, they just continue to deteriorate every day. Okay, does anyone else have anything to add? I think that's it, folks. I would make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's it, everybody. Nice seeing you. Thanks for being here as always. And congratulations to Joyce Cole, our new village historian. Very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Until next time, everybody.
Thank you.
Aye.
Bye-bye.